Senior Monitor Kisk slouched in his monitoring chair, his 4 eyes glazing over as he watched the endless stream of sensor data flow across his screens. Another dull shift at the Galactic Council's Deep Space Monitoring Station was drawing to a close. His secondary hearts weren't even bothering to beat anymore, having slipped into their rest state from sheer boredom. That's when he saw it, a cluster of unusual readings at the edge of the Orion arm. Computer, Enhanced Grid Sector 7 Alpha. He clicked his mandibles together, straightening his crystalline exoskeleton. The holographic display zoomed in, revealing a formation of vessels moving in perfect synchronization. Kisk's primary heart skipped a beat. "Buy the first ones," he muttered. "They're tiny." The ships were barely larger than standard cargo shuttles, yet they moved with military precision. Kisk's analytical mind immediately classified them as a first contact scenario, probably some emerging species making their first tentative steps into the galactic community. He'd seen it dozens of times before. Following standard protocol, he transmitted the data to the Central Command. Within moments, his superior, Grand Observer Vectral, materialized in a hologram beside his station. "Report, Monitor Kisk." Vectral's massive form dominated the projection space, his crystalline plates gleaming with authority markings. "Unknown contact, sir. A fleet of approximately 20 vessels entering Council space through the Orion arm." But Kisk hesitated, mandibles twitching. "Speak freely, Monitor." "Sir, they're absurdly small. Initial scans suggest each vessel is no larger than a pleasure yacht. Hardly worth Council attention." Vectral's booming laugh echoed through the monitoring station. "Small vessels. Have they managed to cram an entire civilization into cargo pods?" His crystalline plates rattled with amusement. "Forward me the detailed scans. This should provide some entertainment for the Council's morning briefing." Aboard the lead vessel Swift Justice, Commander Jessica Hawk Thompson smiled as she watched the alien transmission intercepts scroll across her command screen. The massive monitoring station loomed in their long-range scans, its crystalline inhabitants completely unaware that their communications were being decoded in real time. "They took the bait, Commander," Lieutenant Maria Reyes reported from her communications station, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "They're classifying us as a non-threat." Thompson nodded, her sharp features illuminated by the soft blue glow of the bridge displays. "Perfect. Status of the stealth systems. Ghost drive operating at optimal efficiency." Chief Engineer Jake Morrison reported from his station. "Those oversized rockheads couldn't detect us if we flew straight up their exhaust ports." "Keep it professional, Chief," Thompson admonished, though she couldn't completely hide her smirk. "Status of the rest of the fleet." "All 17 ships reporting ready, Commander," Reyes confirmed. "Captain Anderson's squad is already in position around the monitoring station. They haven't detected a thing." Thompson allowed herself a moment of pride. The tiny fleet doctrine had been controversial back on Earth. Many had argued for building massive ships to match the other spacefaring races. But humanity had learned long ago that bigger wasn't always better. "Send the confirmation signal to command," Thompson ordered. "Operation Trojan Pony is proceeding as planned." As her crew executed their orders with practiced efficiency, Thompson watched the alien monitoring station on her display. The crystalline beings inside were still laughing about their discovery, sharing what they thought was a harmless joke about the tiny ships they'd spotted. They had no idea that those same tiny ships carried enough firepower to reduce their station to space dust. They wouldn't learn that lesson today, Humanity had bigger plans than simple destruction. But soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn why underestimating humanity was a dangerous mistake. "Set course for the Arcturus checkpoint," Thompson commanded. "Let's give them something else to laugh about." Captain Vexter, terror of the Cygnus Arm, watched the tiny fleet through his command viewport with all four of his predatory eyes. His mandibles clicked in anticipation as his massive warships, Death's Hand, Soul Crusher, and Void Reaper, moved into ambush position behind a debris field. "Pathetic," he growled, running a clawed hand over his scarred carapace. "These vessels are so small, my gunners might miss them out of sheer embarrassment." His bridge crew chittered in amusement. They'd taken down Council dreadnoughts 3 times the size of their own ships. These diminutive vessels wouldn't even make satisfying explosions. "Combat positions," Vexter ordered. "Let's show these newcomers why the Cygnus Arm belongs to." His words cut off as proximity alarms screamed across his bridge. "Multiple contacts," his sensor officer shouted. They're everywhere. How can something so small move so?" The transmission dissolved into static. Aboard the Swift Justice, Fleet Admiral Iron Mike Sullivan watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The pirates had taken the bait, just as intelligence had predicted. "Ghost Squadron, execute Pattern Delta," Sullivan commanded. "Show them why we named you after spectres." Captain Ashley Phantom Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "With pleasure, Admiral. Ghost Squadron, quantum shift on my mark." The quantum ghost drives engaged simultaneously across 12 human vessels. To the pirates' primitive sensors, it appeared as if the tiny ships had multiplied, becoming dozens, then hundreds of phantom images, each one radiating real power signatures. "They're panicking," Lieutenant O'Connor reported from Tactical, unable to keep the amusement from his voice. "Their targeting systems are going haywire trying to lock onto our quantum echoes." Sullivan nodded, watching as the massive pirate vessels fired wildly into space, their weapons passing harmlessly through holographic duplicates. "Time to demonstrate why humanity chose quality over quantity. Ghost Squadron, you have weapons free." The human ships moved like angry wasps, their tiny frames allowing them to slip through gaps in the pirates' shield coverage that larger vessels could never exploit. Precision strikes from their micro-fusion lances carved through the massive ship's hull plating like paper. "By the void." Vextor's panicked voice echoed across all frequencies. "What kind of weapons are these? What kind of ships are these?" "The humankind," Sullivan responded calmly before switching off the communication. "Ghost Squadron, finish this. We have a schedule to keep." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, 3 of the most feared pirate vessels in the sector were reduced to drifting hulks, their crews trapped in emergency life support bubbles, waiting for Council authorities to arrive. "Damage report?" Sullivan asked, though he already knew the answer. "None, sir," O'Connor replied with a grin. "They never touched us." Ghost Squadron is reporting successful field test of all new systems. The quantum ghost drive performed beyond expectations. Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. The pirates had done them a favor, really. This skirmish would send a message throughout the underworld. The tiny fleet was not to be trifled with. More importantly, the after-action data would help convince any doubters back home that their radical ship design philosophy had been the right choice. "Send the encrypted report to command," Sullivan ordered, "and get me Commander Thompson. I want Ghost Squadron back in formation before we reach the Council's core systems." Let them keep thinking we're just some amusing little fleet making its first journey into space. As the crew carried out his orders, Sullivan studied the tactical replay of the battle. The pirates' massive ships, designed to intimidate through sheer size, had been helpless against humanity's innovative approach to space combat. It was a lesson the rest of the galaxy would soon learn. Humanity had not built small ships because they had to, but because they chose to. "Set course for the next checkpoint," Sullivan commanded. "Let's go give the Council something else to laugh about." Lieutenant Danny O'Connor sat at his monitoring station aboard the scout ship Mosquito, watching his instruments light up as the Council's deep space scan washed over his vessel. Unlike the previous encounters, this time he made no attempt to deflect it. "Scan penetrating outer hull," he reported, his Irish lilt carrying a hint of amusement. "They're about to get quite an eyeful." Commander Thompson's voice crackled over the secure channel. "Confirmed, Lieutenant. Let them see exactly what we want them to see." In the Council's central archives, Senior Archivist Zeltaxa's tentacles went rigid as data flooded her screens. Her chromatophores flashed rapid patterns of disbelief as she double-checked, then triple-checked the readings. "Impossible," she whispered, her color shifting to a pale green of shock. "Computer, verify species identification." The A's response was immediate. "Species confirmation. Human. Origin. Terra/Earth. Sol system. Orion Arm." Zeltaxa's tentacles trembled as she accessed the classified files. The humans, the same primitive species the Council had been monitoring for centuries, expecting them to destroy themselves in nuclear fire, had somehow developed technology that bordered on the miraculous. "Emergency session," she broadcasted to all Council members. "Classification level. Omega." Within minutes, the Council chamber erupted into chaos as the scan data was displayed. Microfusion reactors. A crystalline being buzzed in disbelief. In ships that small. "Look at these inertial dampening readings," another councillor chittered. "They've completely solved the mass displacement problem we've struggled with for millennia." Ambassador Exelvik, his massive form towering over the others, slammed a giant appendage onto the table. "How is this possible? Our last assessment showed them barely capable of reaching their own moon." A junior archivist rushed in, his scales pale with fear. "Councillors, we've been compromised. Someone leaked our classified human observation files to the public networks." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For decades, the Council had maintained observation posts around Earth, watching humanity struggle with its internal conflicts. They had smugly predicted that humans would follow the path of so many other species, destroying themselves before reaching the stars. Instead, humanity had unified, and they'd been watching the observers the entire time. Aboard the Mosquito, O'Connor smiled as he intercepted the Council's frantic communications. "They've taken the bait, Commander. The classified files are spreading across their networks like wildfire." "Excellent work, Lieutenant," Thompson replied. "What's the reaction?" "Pure panic," he chuckled. "They're particularly upset about the microfusion reactors. Apparently, they didn't think it was possible to build them this small." Admiral Sullivan's voice joined the channel. Of course they didn't. They spent so long building bigger ships, they forgot to imagine building better ones. The tactical display showed Council vessels scrambling from nearby systems, no doubt rushing to contain what they saw as a security breach. They still didn't understand that everything, from the leaked files to their discovery of human technology, was proceeding exactly as planned. "Sir," O'Connor reported, his tone growing serious, I'm picking up some interesting chatter. Apparently, we weren't the only ones they were watching. The Council has been systematically suppressing aggressive species across the galaxy, keeping them isolated until they destroy themselves. Sullivan's response was grim. As we suspected, initiate Phase 3. It's time to show them that their strategy of containment and observation has backfired spectacularly. Commander Thompson's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Send the signal to all hidden units. Operation Trojan Pony is proceeding to final stages. O'Connor transmitted the coded burst, knowing that across Council space, hundreds of tiny human vessels were preparing to emerge from their hiding spots. The Council had spent centuries watching humanity, waiting for them to fail. Instead, they'd given humans time to perfect technologies they'd never imagined possible. Setting course for the primary starbase, O'Connor reported. Let's go make history. The tiny scout ship accelerated away, leaving behind a Council that was quickly learning a painful lesson. Sometimes the smallest vessels carry the biggest surprises. Captain Emily Ghost Martinez watched the massive Council dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, appear out of hyperspace, its hull gleaming like a small moon against the starfield. At 15 kilometers long, it was considered the pinnacle of Council engineering, and their response to humanity's revelation. Show-offs, she muttered from the bridge of her Wasp-class vessel, Stinger. At barely 100 meters long, her ship could fit in the dreadnought's shuttle bay with room to spare. Council vessel is hailing us, Lieutenant Way announced from communications. Their commander sounds frustrated. I bet he does, Martinez grinned. Put him on screen. High Commander Vexler appeared, his crystalline features arranged in what passed for dignified concern among his species. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Power down and prepare for inspection, or you'll what? Martinez interrupted, enjoying how his crystal facets flickered in surprise at her casual tone. Try to catch us? Please do. My crew could use the entertainment. The High Commander's face hardened. You dare. Actually, I do dare. Stinger out. She cut the transmission. Battle stations, everyone. Let's show them why humans don't need oversized ships to dominate space. The massive dreadnought's weapons came online, its targeting arrays scanning for the tiny human vessel. But the Stinger was already moving, its revolutionary inertial dampeners allowing for maneuvers that would turn most species to paste. Executing Maneuver Delta 7, Lieutenant Sarah Cooper called from the helm, her hands dancing across the neural interface. The Stinger spun on its axis, pulling a turn that seemed to deny physics itself. In the Council vessel's command center, alarms blared. Impossible. Vexthor roared. Nothing can move like that. Where are they? Sir, his tactical officer's crystals were vibrating with panic. Their drive signature, it's everywhere and nowhere. Our targeting AA can't establish a lock. Martinez allowed herself a predatory smile as the Stinger carved through space around the massive dreadnought. Their quantum weight drive, humanity's greatest achievement, left possibility echoes in its path, making the small ship appear to be in dozens of places simultaneously. All those resources spent building bigger ships, she mused aloud, and they never thought to build smarter ones. Tactical, you may fire when ready. Training mode only. The Stinger's microfusion lances activated, sending precisely calculated bursts of energy that painted bright, harmless marks across the dreadnought's hull. Each hit represented what would have been a killing blow in actual combat. Sir, Cooper reported, struggling to keep the laughter from her voice, I'm intercepting their tactical analysis. Their best combat AI is having a meltdown trying to calculate our possible moves. It's apparently threatening to resign its commission. Martinez keyed the channel open again. "Hi, Commander. I just demonstrated 17 different ways we could have destroyed your vessel. Would you like me to continue the lesson, or are you ready to have a civilized conversation?" The crystalline commander's face appeared, his features noticeably less composed. How? How are you doing this?" "Simple," Martinez replied. "While you were building bigger cages for your ship's massive power plants, we learned to miniaturize. While you were adding more armor, we perfected evasion. While you were making bigger guns, we developed precision. Quantity of force isn't everything, Commander. Sometimes, the smallest wasp can take down the largest beast." She watched realization dawn in his crystalline features. The Council's entire defensive doctrine, based on overwhelming force and massive ships, had just been proven obsolete by vessels smaller than their standard fighter craft. "Send our tactical data to Council Strategic Command," she ordered after closing the channel. "Let them spend the next few days realizing just how vulnerable their entire fleet really is." The Stinger fell into formation with the rest of the human fleet, leaving behind a dreadnought whose crew was frantically recalculating everything they thought they knew about space combat. In the darkness of space, size had just lost its advantage to innovation. "Set course for the Council starbase," Martinez commanded. "I think we've made our point here." Ambassador Jack Wheeler, former Navy SEAL turned diplomat, stood calmly in the Council's massive reception chamber, his 6-foot frame dwarfed by the alien delegates towering around him. The chamber, designed to intimidate with its soaring crystalline archways and massive throne-like seats, seemed to emphasize his species' smaller stature. Subtle chuckles echoed through the chamber as he approached the central podium. To these giants, he probably looked like a child at an adult's desk. "Esteemed members of the Council," Wheeler began, his deep voice carrying unexpected authority, "I come representing the United Earth government." High Councillor Zaxtel leaned forward, his massive crystalline bulk glittering under the chamber's lights. "We are curious, Ambassador Wheeler. Your vessels are unusually compact. One might even say, inadequate for a spacefaring civilization." More chuckles rippled through the chamber. Wheeler smiled, the same smile he'd worn during countless special operations when the enemy thought they had the upper hand. About that, he reached for a small device on his belt. "Computer, activate Tactical Display Alpha." The chamber's holographic system sprang to life, but not with the display he'd requested. Instead, error messages flashed across every screen. "My apologies." Wheeler's smile widened. "Let me use our system instead." He pressed another button, and suddenly the entire chamber was filled with holographic representations of human vessels, hundreds of them, scattered throughout the Council's home system. Each ship's position was marked with a timestamp showing they had arrived weeks ago. The chamber erupted in chaos. Impossible. The security chief, a massive arachnoid being, rose on his 8 legs. "Our defense grid would have." His voice cut off as he collapsed back into his seat, his species equivalent of fainting. "Would have what?" Wheeler asked pleasantly. "Detected us. The same way you detected our technological advancement on Earth. The same way you noticed us watching your observation posts. The same way you spotted the quantum communications network we established throughout your territory." He walked around the podium, gesturing to different clusters of ships. "Right now, humanity has enough firepower in this system alone to reduce every major installation to atomic dust. We've been here for weeks, studying your defenses, analyzing your responses, and most importantly, He paused for effect. Protecting you. Protecting us. Zack Still's voice carried equal parts outrage and fear. From what? From the 3 separate pirate fleets that try to raid your outer colonies this month. From the Drachnid scout ships testing your borders. From yourselves, really. Wheeler shrugged. We've been quietly cleaning up problems while you were busy laughing at our tiny ships. He pressed another button, and the display shifted to show recordings of human vessels intercepting various threats, always without being detected by Council systems. The United Earth government isn't here to threaten you, Wheeler continued. We're here to join you, to help you. But first, you needed to understand something. Size isn't everything. Humanity's greatest strength isn't in how big we can build something. It's in how clever we can be with what we have. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Wheeler could practically see the paradigm shifting in their minds. We've prepared a comprehensive technical package for your review, he said, placing a small data crystal on the podium. Microfusion technology, quantum ghost drives, advanced inertial dampeners. We are willing to share it all. In exchange, we want full membership in the Council and an end to your policy of suppressing emerging civilizations. Zack still lifted the tiny crystal with his massive manipulators, staring at it as if it might explode. And if we refuse? Wheeler's smile never wavered. We'll leave peacefully. But consider this. If we can hide hundreds of ships in your home system without you noticing, imagine what else we might be capable of. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't built a tiny fleet out of weakness. They'd done it by choice. And in doing so, they changed the rules of the game entirely. Now then, Wheeler straightened his uniform. Shall we discuss the terms of our membership? The diplomatic chamber's emergency lights pulsed red as alarms screamed through the station. Commander Rachel Lucky Murphy watched from the command deck of her ship, Fortune's Favor, as massive Drachnid warships emerged from hyperspace, dozens of them, their biomechanical hulls writhing with weapon pods. They certainly picked their moment, Murphy muttered, watching Council ships scramble into defensive formations. Their massive vessels moved with all the grace of drunken elephants. Commander, her XO, Lieutenant James Chen, reported, the Drachnid fleet is transmitting. Surrender the human vessels, and the Council lives. Well, that's direct. Murphy's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Get me Ambassador Wheeler and Admiral Sullivan. And someone wake up Captain Anderson. He'll never forgive me if we start this party without him. The holographic conference materialized instantly. Wheeler's diplomatic attire was slightly disheveled. He'd been evacuating with the Council when the attack began. The Council's in complete disarray, Wheeler reported. They're convinced the Drachnids detected weakness because of our presence. Their entire defense doctrine is falling apart. Sullivan's hologram nodded grimly. Their doctrine was outdated the moment we entered their space. Commander Murphy, what's your assessment? Murphy's fingers danced across her tactical display. 23 Drachnid capital ships, each roughly the size of a small moon. Biomechanical armor, regenerative capabilities, and enough firepower to glass a continent. She paused, her smile widening. They haven't got a chance. Bold words. Wheeler raised an eyebrow. Sir, they built their ships like battleships, slow, powerful, meant to overwhelm with brute force. Murphy's eyes gleamed with professional appreciation. We built ours like hornets, fast, precise, and absolutely lethal when we swarm. Permission to demonstrate. Sullivan shared a look with Wheeler, who nodded. Permission granted, Commander. Show them why humanity chose quality over quantity. Murphy's fingers flew across her console. All human vessels. This is Commander Murphy. Execute Operation Hornet's Nest. I say again, Operation Hornet's Nest is a go. The Council's evacuation came to a stunned halt as hundreds of human ships suddenly decloaked throughout the system. The tiny vessels, previously hidden by their quantum ghost drives, appeared like stars blinking into existence. On the Drachnid command ship, High Commander Vex-Nar watched the sensor readings with his 4 eyes widening in alarm. What trickery is this? Sir, his tactical officer's tentacles write in distress. The human vessels, they are everywhere. Our targeting systems can't. Silence. Vex-Nar roared. They're trying to intimidate us with holograms. Press the attack. Show them what real warships can. The transmission cut off as Murphy's voice broke across all frequencies. You built your ships like battleships. We built ours like swarms of angry hornets. Let's show them why that was a mistake. The human fleet moved as one, their formations shifting like schools of fish, each tiny ship perfectly coordinated with its neighbours. The Drachnid targeting systems, designed to track capital ships, couldn't keep up with the quantum ghost signatures multiplying across their sensors. First lesson, Murphy announced as her ships darted between the massive Drachnid vessels. Size makes you predictable. The Fortune's favour led a squadron right through a gap in the Drachnid formation, a gap that would have been too small for any Council ship to attempt. Second lesson, bigger isn't always better. From the Council chamber, the alien diplomats watched in awe as the human fleet executed maneuvers that seemed to defy physics itself. The tiny ships moved like angry insects, their precise formations making the mighty Drachnid fleet look clumsy and sluggish in comparison. All units, Murphy commanded, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who knew they'd already won, weapons free. Let's remind the galaxy why you should never judge a fleet by its size. The space around the station erupted in light as hundreds of micro-fusion lances activated simultaneously. The Hornet's Nest was about to live up to its name. Captain Tyler Maverick Anderson watched his targeting display as his squadron dove between the massive plates of Drachnid bioarmor. His ship, Swift Retribution, was barely larger than one of the alien vessel's weapon pods, and that was exactly how he liked it. Wasp Squadron, form up on me, he commanded. Lieutenant Rodriguez, you're clear to deploy the quantum disruptors. About time. Sarah Glitch, Rodriguez's voice crackled with enthusiasm. Initiating QD field sequence. Let's see how their biological systems handle this. The quantum disruption field sprang to life, invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to the Drachnid's semi-organic technology. The massive ship's regenerative armor began to spasm and twist, unable to maintain cohesion under the quantum assault. They're starting to panic, Anderson reported, watching the enemy formations deteriorate. Murphy, we've got them rattled. From her command position, Commander Murphy's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Excellent. All units, execute Operation Stinger. Hit them where it hurts. The human fleet moved like a choreographed dance, hundreds of tiny ships weaving through the chaos with precision that seemed almost impossible. Each vessel targeted specific weaknesses in the Drachnid ship's design, weaknesses that would have been impossible to exploit with conventional capital ships. Sir, Rodriguez called out, I'm detecting energy buildup in their flagship. They're trying to activate their mass driver. Anderson grinned. Trying is the operative word. Wasp Squadron, show them why bringing a battleship to a Hornet fight was a bad idea. His squadron split into perfect formation, their quantum ghost drives creating a dizzying array of false targets. The Drachnid flagship's massive weapon ports tracked uselessly, unable to lock onto any single target. You know what the Drachnid's biggest mistake was? Anderson asked as his ship dove through a gap in the flagship's armor plating. They designed their ships to fight ships like theirs. Big, slow, predictable. They never imagined having to fight something they couldn't easily hit. As if to prove his point, the flagship's main gun fired, the massive energy beam passing harmlessly through space where Anderson's squadron had been microseconds before. The recoil from the shot left the giant ship vulnerable for just a moment, exactly as planned. Now, Murphy's command rang across all frequencies. Hit them with everything. Every human vessel fired simultaneously, their microfusion lances targeting precise points across the Drachnid ships. What looked like tiny pinpricks of light to the massive aliens were actually devastating strikes at critical systems, carefully calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum energy expenditure. The Drachnid flagship's bridge erupted in chaos as secondary explosions cascaded through their systems. High Commander Vexnar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by ships he could barely see on his tactical display. "Impossible," he roared. "They're not even using proper warships. How are they?" "That's where you're wrong." Anderson's voice cut across the command channel. "We are using proper warships. You just never imagined that proper could mean small." The battle, if it could even be called that anymore, lasted less than 15 minutes. When it was over, the mighty Drachnid fleet hung motionless in space, their biomechanical systems in complete shutdown, their weapons disabled, their crews trapped inside their own massive vessels. From the Council observation deck, the alien diplomats watched in stunned silence. They had just witnessed the complete destruction of one of the galaxy's most feared military forces by ships they had been mocking hours earlier. "Status report," Murphy called out as the last Drachnid ship went dark. "No casualties on our side," Anderson reported, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Minimal energy expenditure. All targets neutralized. The Council's home system is secure." As the human fleet regrouped, their tiny ships moving with the same precise coordination they had shown throughout the battle, Anderson couldn't help but smile. The galaxy would never look at small ships the same way again. Well, he transmitted to Murphy, I guess size really doesn't matter after all. 1 week after the Battle of Council Prime, Ambassador Jack Wheeler stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The massive chamber, once designed to intimidate smaller species, had been modified. Where once stood towering thrones, now sat adjustable platforms ensuring all species, regardless of size, could meet eye to eye. "The galaxy changes today," Wheeler began, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Not because of military might, but because of a simple truth. Greatness cannot be measured by size alone." The council members, still processing the complete paradigm shift of the past week, listened intently. The Drachnid fleet still hung in orbit, their massive ships now serving as a monument to outdated thinking. High Councillor Zaxtil, his crystalline form somewhat more humble than before, raised a manipulator. "The Council recognizes that humanity's approach to space warfare has rendered our previous defensive doctrines obsolete. But surely you don't expect every species to abandon generations of shipbuilding tradition." Commander Murphy, standing beside Wheeler in her dress uniform, stepped forward. "Actually, we expect exactly that. Computer, display project renaissance." The chamber's holographic systems, now upgraded with human technology, sprang to life, showing designs for new ships of all sizes. Humanity doesn't demand that everyone builds small, Murphy explained. We demand that everyone builds smart. Our engineers have already drafted conversion plans for existing Council vessels, incorporating our microfusion and quantum ghost drive technologies. Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared next, her technical expertise evident as she walked the Council through the specifications. The future isn't about building bigger ships, it's about building better ones. A Council dreadnought retrofitted with our tech could be crewed by any species, large or small. Imagine ships that adapt to their crews, rather than crews adapting to their ships. The chamber erupted in excited discussion as species of all sizes realized the implications. The prejudice against smaller races, long embedded in Council culture through ship design alone, was about to end. Admiral Sullivan stepped forward next, but this isn't just about ships. Humanity's admission to the Council comes with conditions. The policy of suppressing emerging civilizations ends today. Every species deserves the chance to reach the stars in their own way. And if we refuse, a voice called from the back. Wheeler smiled, not his diplomatic smile, but the one that reminded everyone he'd been a SEAL before becoming an ambassador. Then we leave, taking our technology with us. And remember, if we can hide an entire fleet in your home system, imagine what else we might be hiding. The threat wasn't necessary. The Council had already voted unanimously to accept human membership and all its conditions. Within hours, the first joint Human Council engineering teams would begin modernizing the Galactic fleet. Later, on the observation deck of the Swift Justice, Commander Thompson watched construction crews begin work on the new Council Defense Headquarters, a structure designed to accommodate all species equally. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said to Murphy, who stood beside her. "We didn't build small ships to prove a point. We built them because they were better." Murphy nodded. And now the galaxy's learned what humanity has known for ages. It's not the size of the ship in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the ship, Thompson finished, raising a glass. To the tiny fleet, the biggest surprise the galaxy never saw coming. Across Council space, shipyards began retooling for a new era. The massive, wasteful designs of the past gave way to sleeker, more efficient vessels. Species that had been marginalized for their size suddenly found themselves in high demand for their ability to pilot the new hybrid ships. And in Earth's orbital shipyards, construction continued on humanity's next generation of vessels, each one a perfect blend of innovation and efficiency. They were still small by Council standards, but no one was laughing anymore. After all, the galaxy had learned its lesson. The smallest ships often carry the biggest surprises. Wheeler's final report to Earth summed it up perfectly. In seeking to make humanity small, they forced us to become clever. In trying to keep us contained, they taught us to think outside every box. And in mocking our tiny fleet, they never realized that sometimes the most powerful things in the universe come in the smallest packages.